Here's a question for you. To what extent, if we see evil in the world, should we fight it? And to what extent should we retreat into ourselves? There's this quote from Lawrence where he says, if you see the world inventing poison gas and falling into its poisoned grave, never give in, but be alone and utterly alone with your own soul, in the stillness and sweet possession of your own soul. And don't ever be angry and never be sad. Why should you? It's not your affair.
It's not personal.
But that's to address one of the great moral questions of life and of all time.
Yes.
And say, oh, there's somebody's making poison gas, I won't have anything to do with it. Okay, I suppose.
Well,
right?
It's an alternative to when in fear, when in doubt, when in circles, scream and shout, or however that thing goes.
Boy, that's great. Where'd that come from?
I don't know. I heard it years ago. But to have your own sense of self and a center and a sense of your being without regard to the fluctuations that are taking place. That's extremely valuable. And I think if you do that purely as an escape, that's probably not quite right. Because I would think that if you're doing that and you see the Huns coming over the hill, that you get active and you don't just sit there quietly.
Well, I think what Lawrence is talking about is being alone in your own soul and being stoic about the outcomes of actions, because ultimately whatever happens, it's between you and your God. But there are of course times where you have to fight, but you should never allow yourself to become some sort of automatic unit that becomes one with the fighting. You have to be alone with your own soul, even if you have to fight evil.
Yeah, well, and you can be alone, and watch yourself coordinating with other soldiers and fighting the battle. The important thing is to have an awareness that's independent of all that. God is a refuge. God is my sword and shield. All of the above. But in a world so oriented toward action, the notion of not doing anything sounds like it's evading your responsibility, but it isn't necessarily.
And if you have the right attitude, anything can lead to mystical intuitions. I mean, I think of just as two examples, Robert Graves and Edward Thomas, the latter of whom died in the First World War, but both of whom served and wrote marvelous poems about communion with other soldiers and nature and how that led them to God. If you allow it to, anything, even horrible things like war, can lead you to something good. In fact, Maya actually just had an article published in some major journal about the Ukraine crisis and her growing up in Bosnia during the war. And then I asked her, I said, if you had a time machine and could go back in time and prevent the war in Bosnia, but it meant that you weren't the person you were today, would you do it? And she said, I'd have to think about that because, it was a horrible, horrible thing, but for her and some other people, it helped them to become who they are today, and they might not have been who they are today in a good sense without that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you look back across your life and it in some got you to where you are now. And if that's a better place, then it's done some good. And besides, you don't know how it could have been otherwise.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Worth noting.
Which doesn't mean that, you can always notice the changes that have taken place in you and find a value in them and use them appropriately. And which is a kind of gratitude for your past. But it's not specific exactly. It has more to do with faith that God is, leading you along some path, even if He's not going anywhere. Drawing you through life like a cord?
Cord?
Yeah, life is like...
yes, that's right.
Being drawn through a museum, by an invisible cord or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Man in the Universe, or was that?
Yeah, I think somewhere around there. So
Yep.
the important thing is not is what's pulling, not what should I push on.
Okay.
Well, I want to branch out here and ask you this question, which I think will be interesting. Sidi Talha and Sheikh Al Bashir, how did you two meet each other? Would you please talk a bit about how you became friends and about some of the most pivotal parts of your friendship? And if you feel like it, share some stories.
Well, I think we are generally agreed that we both remember when we met,
Yeah.
and we both remember that we immediately didn't like each other.
Well, I don't remember it quite that starkly, but
Well, I'm putting it in high focus here, but
yeah, yeah, exactly. But you know that you weren't anybody interesting.
yeah,
Uh,
and you were sort of a techie, radio nerdy kind of person.
and I was.
Yeah, well, turned out to be pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, that isn't all I was.
Then I was part of this group in college that shared a building, a house on campus with the honors college. And that was some open study space sometime, which those who were there really sort of had control over. And it was, after all, a house. And I remember you were studying there.
Well, I don't know if I was studying, but I was
Okay.
there. I'm sure the first time I went, I didn't know what I was going to.
All right. Well, I remember the table being there and you being there. And I was with Phyllis, remember? And she had a song she wanted to play. The song actually was the Judy Collins version of the Leonard Cohen song, Suzanne.
Oh yeah.
And you and I both synced with it, and I think started taking each other more seriously.
Yeah, and I think that might have been before I had actually heard the song elsewhere.
Well, I hadn't heard it elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So she was really on the forefront of things
Yes, yes, and that whole album,
in my life.
that particular album, has played a key role in my life. Not only did that song sort of bring us together, but when Lynn and I were married at this private ceremony, we each gave each other a song and played a song at the wedding, and they were
Oh.
both from that album.
I hope it wasn't dress rehearsal rag.
No, no.
Or wait a minute, is that on that album?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Got up sometime in the afternoon, didn't feel like much.
Yep. I think that's a really good song. It really kind of gets your attention, makes you think about,
Yes.
you know, how you're living your life and all that.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, he writes good stuff, or wrote good stuff.
Yes, that's right.
But I always think of that as the classic version of Suzanne.
Yeah, 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 me too. Not nearly as good to hear the author sing it.
No, no.
So although you get something you don't get anywhere else, and it's not just the gravelly voice.
Right, and the character also in many ways reminded me of Seda Bahia, about there are heroes in the seaweed, there are children in the garden, she shows you where to look,
Oh yeah,
you know,
amid the
garbage and the flowers.
garbage and the flowers. Yeah,
That album's a big deal.
yeah. Well, it's a masterpiece, and it's just got so much good art in it.
Yes.
And it came along at a time when its impact on the culture, you know, it's like the culture was primed for it. I mean, it affected the Beatles because they did some work with some of those. You know, I think it's probably the album that nobody talked loudly about that maybe had the most effect on things that year, whatever year that was.
Yeah.
65 or 6.
The last, excuse me, live concert I saw in New York was about 6 weeks ago. I went out of my way to see it, and it was Judy Collins.
Oh, all right. I saw her somewhere the last decade or so.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm confusing her with somebody else. Somebody else whose music I encountered about the same time. So never mind.
Well, so there. Are we answering your question? And how is it that we both took up the search for path together?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, I think it's because we recognized a certain kind of curiosity in each other, and that
because we really did go on the long search together.
Yeah,
for years, right?
Well, I think it's probably because when we met early on, we sort of decided that's what was valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we might not have put it in the same words at the time.
Well, and then we had that year-long adventure at my place in Springfield. That was, I think, very valuable.
Well, I think so too.
And produced what I think was the second most memorable sunrise I've seen in my life.
What's the first?
Standing on the plain in Wyoming with Tom Yellowtail blowing our eagle bone whistles.
Oh yes,
watching the sun be born.
Yeah, that's a much bigger sunset out there.
Sunrise.
Sunrise, yeah.
Yes. I would bet if you were to ask Berta, of all the sunrises you've seen in your life, what's number one? That would be her number one.
Probably.
How are we doing with your question?
It's all interesting, but so the two of you met in college?
Freshman year in college.
In college.
Yeah, and I got my first marijuana from Terry. But I reciprocated by coming up with DMT.
That's right. Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And we've all heard about your personal story towards the Tariqa, but I'm curious, you said you went on the long journey together. What are some of the more interesting side roads that you took?
Well, hallucinogens for one.
Agreed.
And I took the fourth way side track for a while. Actually, I'm still taking it. I still venture onto that side track. But
yeah, that was really a turning point. And In Search of the Miraculous was my first encounter with the esoteric.
That's right.
I didn't know the term.
Something really crystallized with the appearance of that book in our midst.
Yes.
It was an amazing confirmation that there was really something to discover.
Yes, and when we got into that together, then it was we were best friends.
Maybe still are.
Yes, that's right. We still are.
I mean, what's that been? 57 years? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's the person I've known for the longest, I think, now that my parents have been gone for a number of years.
And
my brother. I forgot my brother, but he hides out, and I rarely am aware of him. But yes, he would be the longest one.
And the two of you, did you end up joining the Tariqa at the same time?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, we discovered it at the same time. We entered at slightly different times.
Which is to say, like, a month apart or something like that.
Yeah. It was within a very short span, and even before I entered, I knew I wanted to. So yeah, it was just a magical time. And I think some magic has come from it.
I agree completely. It's all magical.
Yeah, it really is.
It's all magical.
And how about when there have been difficult times and things in life, such as the various difficult times in the history of the Tariqa? How did you two help each other cope with that?
We talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, once you get the feeling that something isn't right.
Yeah, exactly. Then you start inquiring about it, and you can't inquire much with other people, so you can inquire with somebody that else in the Tariqa who's close. Because it was just, all of a sudden there were a number of things that didn't make sense. So we sat around and tried to make sense out of it.
And one of the clearest was not being able to discuss things.
Yeah, exactly. Not being able to take our questions directly into the magisterium of the Tariqa.
Yes. Because in the Tariqa at that point, having questions was a sign of disbelief.
Yes, exactly. As if anybody knew anything about absolute faith. Yeah, I mean, it was just striking how there was no distinction made between having questions and questioning the authority. And that was really one of the most discouraging discoveries.
What would it be? What would it be, you say, that, despite all of that, you kept your faith and you kept on seeking, rather than becoming discouraged and an atheist like Coslow?
Well, because there was the truth.
Yeah, we hadn't changed our minds about what we were at.
We didn't cease believing in God or the truth or the real.
Yeah,
just not in the cult that wanted to represent it to us.
Yeah, exactly. When you find that you can't get what you want in one place, you go somewhere else, and you might go wandering for a while.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do too much wandering.
No.
But I did. That is when I immersed myself in the Church Fathers and Buddhist writings, and that was very valuable. It was
all of that was valuable, and it all affirmed that
exactly.
Exactly. There was a truth.
It affirmed the truth that we thought we were going to get from the Tariqa, and I guess to a certain extent we did.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I just felt like my world falling apart there for a while. I couldn't read Sheikh Isa. It was, too sad or something. I don't know.
Too painful.
Yeah, too painful. I didn't want to, So I found these other places which were telling me the same thing in another language without the problems that I had just encountered. Not that, those sources don't have their problems too, but yeah, it was very much a validation to do that. And it was still a number of years before I really wanted to open a Schuon book, but I can do it now.
I may have passed through that for a while, but when I did, I found some of the Schuon writing so beautiful.
Yeah, they are. That's where we started out this Tariqa thing, was discovering these incredibly deep and beautiful writings, and they haven't changed.
Right. And I think we now understand what we should have understood back there, and what everybody should have understood back there, is all of this truth and beauty and God thing. It's not about Frithjof Schuon. It's about God.
Yeah, exactly.
And what a wonderful lens he is.
Yeah,
but it's not about him.
It's not about him. Truth is always impersonal.
Yes.
It is what it is, whether you like it or not. That's starting to sound like, I've forgotten the term, existentialism.
Oh, is that an existential phrase? Like it or not?
No, I don't think so. But the only thing I think of with existentialism is, accepting existence, or the fact that I read Albert Camus in French class in high school.
Okay.
And he was an existentialist. And he wrote in a way that implied that a lot of things really didn't matter. The book, I guess it's The Stranger.
I think that's right.
Opens with either yesterday or today, mother died. And it goes on from there.
Yeah, he says mother died yesterday. Or was it the day before that? But, I think what you mentioned here is a very important lesson for people. Countless times I've heard people say, I'm an atheist. Why am I an atheist? I'm an atheist because my church believes this and I can't believe that. Or my church insists this and
I got disillusioned with my religion.
That's a completely temporal, exoteric, organized religion's way of imposing certain things that happen to be, written down by a bunch of old guys in a different time and place, and it really has nothing to do with God. If you don't have faith in God, you don't have faith in God. But don't give me the excuse that it's because of the dictates of a religion, because there are other religions and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What did you think you were getting in this religion? Oh, you can't get it there? Well, can you get it somewhere else?
And it's interesting how also people that leave religion turned science and math into a religion of itself. And, they can touch things, granted, that they can actually be symbols pointing at reality, but they're not the truth. And there's this Jeffers poem that I think is marvelous. He says, science and mathematics run parallel to reality. They symbolize it. They squint at it. They never touch it. Consider what an explosion would rock the bones of men into little white fragments and unsky the world if any mind should for a moment touch truth.
Yeah. What was that? Were the first couple of lines?
Science and mathematics run parallel to reality. They symbolize it. They squint at it. They never touch it.
Yeah.
Right.
The parallel lines don't cross. Or you could say that each one is a reflection of reality and in a different direction.
But it's the same also with religion. Religion symbolizes reality. It squints at it, but it doesn't touch it. Ultimately, reality is something that is not thought or cognized. It's something experienced. And as with all experience, it's something that has to be born by oneself. Someone experience except maybe God in a non-dual sense, because your experience of God is God experiencing itself. But
what else is there?
Right.
Yes, I like that run parallel business because it seems so clear.
Yeah, it's a point of view, traversing reality or having it flow past, and as such, it's never the thing itself.
And I never understood the whole prohibition on pantheism, turning pantheism into a heresy. It just seems absurd to me. It's denying the radical immanence of God when all that is an extension of that which is the source and fountain of all being. If something is, it has its basis in God. So yes, you don't just see God in someplace up in the sky. You see God in another person's eyes. You see God in the hawk that's flying down to catch its prey, and you see God in walls of granite. God is everywhere, and not just in the beautiful things either. God is the worm.
Oh yeah. Well, the story about the prophet and somebody else walking along and seeing a dog skeleton or something like that.
I think it's a Jesus story.
Really?
I think so.
Well, that'll do too. But, the one person is sort of repulsed by it, and the other person says, but how white his teeth are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it was a dead dog.
Yeah.
And, to go back to the fourth way, I mean, there have been a lot of people that have been very, very, very much helped by Gurdjieff. I mean, it's the history is almost as interesting as his writings and doctrine. I mean, you know about Fontainebleau and how he was running a sanatorium for tubercular patients, and that he was basically teaching them there. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, Fontainebleau is where there was, in the not too distant past, and maybe still is, famous music conservatory of some kind. I mean, it may be, the term may refer to an area in France or something, but I know people who have been there for musical reasons.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It appears to be the same word. It may not be the same place.
One of the best short story writers in the English language, Catherine Mansfield, was diagnosed with tuberculosis and passed away at a very young age. But she spent her last years in Fontainebleau, and her final stories are suffused with Gurdjieffian insights.
Yeah, I don't think I've read anything by her, which is surprising because I tried to sort of go find anybody who wrote about that.
Anyway, as time's moving on, next one would be, how would you interpret the statement, "The kingdom of God is inside you"?
I would remember the Gospel of Thomas.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going.
Where it says, it's within you and without you.
If it's in the sky, the birds will precede you. If it's in the ocean,
Yeah.
the fish will precede you. But it is,
Yeah.
but the kingdom of God is within you, and there's more to it than that. But
Yeah. In the Beatles song, life goes on without you.
within you and without you.
Yeah, within you and without you. That's right. That's what I mean. Within and without. But that was a valuable thing to find in the Bible way back in the day.
Well, I don't think the Gospel of Thomas is in the Bible.
No, it's not. No, I was talking about the simple form.
The simple, well, yeah, but there are plenty of those references certainly in the Gospels.
Not enough.
Well,
if there were a whole lot of them, people might not be able to ignore them.
My first good taste of Christianity after I had wholesale rejected Christianity came after I had been in the Tariq a little while, and I started reading Tolstoy's religious writings.
Yeah.
And one of them is titled "The Kingdom of God is Within You," and it's marvelous because it really gets to the essence of Christianity and cuts out a lot of the BS. And he also did his own translation of the New Testament into Russian, but unlike almost every other translator, he refused to do a literal translation. He basically cut and, did things in a creative way. He wanted to translate the spirit rather than the letter of the Gospels. And it was so marvelous a thing that Ludwig Wittgenstein actually carried a copy of Tolstoy's Gospels in his pocket during the First World War and said it's the only thing that got him through the war.
Yeah. I never gave up on Christianity. I mean, I gave up on it as a personal path, but not as an inspiring teaching and source of insight. I just came to the conclusion that I couldn't find anybody that knew anything about it.
I found a quotation.
All right.
Jesus said, "If those who lead you say, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourself, then you will become known and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourself, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty."
How great is that darkness? Yes. Huh. Yeah, that's really good. It ought to be in the Bible.
Can't get much better than that. That's right. Yes, that's right. Of course.
Doesn't he also has this thing doesn't he say where lift up a rock and I am there, and
I don't remember that.
Some things like that. Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe it's not there, but it's somewhere in the Christian corpus.
Some of the most interesting things in the Christian corpus are in the Apocrypha and the Gnostic writings.
Yes.
Indeed.
You get a sense of what you've been missing, and from the Gnostics, it's like you are reminded that you have a brain and might use it, because there's just stuff in there that you really have to try to understand. You can't just, believe and act.
Here's more. The kingdom of God is inside within you and all about you, not in building mansions of wood or stone. Split a piece of wood and I am there.
Ah, that's it.
Lift the stone and you will find me.
Is that in Thomas?
Yeah, this is all Thomas. 77.
Well, Thomas is good. Obviously a Gnostic gospel, and a lot more so than the Gospel of John. But John's pretty good when it's good.
There's a lot that's really good in the New Testament.
There is, but you've got the opening, in John where it says, let's see, how does it start out? About the light, and the light shone in the darkness, and that darkness.
Yes,
that
Genesis,
light came to us. Something like that. I can't remember now how that goes, but you see that there's a whole view of reality contained in that.
Yes.
The Christian Saint Basil of Caesarea said, The kingdom of heaven is within you, and concerning the inner man, it consists of nothing but contemplation. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven must be contemplation. I think that's marvelous, but
Yeah.
imagine a Protestant saying that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they don't know what contemplation is. They think it's thinking.
That's really the big error, is confusing thinking with awareness.
Yeah. And knowing answers rather than understanding. I don't think I'll ever let that one go.
Yes, no, I agree.